period from last year to this year, we've got a draft long-term plan. It's only draft at this stage, and this is what we're presenting to you tonight here. So it is a roadmap, but before we do look at that, I am going to pass it over to Ted, Mr. Anderson, who is our Group Manager of Assets, because we've had the issue of the water in Putaruru, and I think probably that could be a burning question on some people's minds at the moment. But what I do really want to stress on everybody is that operationally everything was done really well. It was, and I'll apologise for it now, the communications. I want to apologise to those people who felt that they were let down by council staff and elected members and me from the communications. So we've learned from that. We've got some lots of learnings, and going forward we are going to have a public meeting, and not next Wednesday but Wednesday afterwards. You will get notified of that, and we will be talking about the water and how the crisis and how we dealt with it, and we want feedback from the community as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Ted, and he can take us through what happened, why it happened, how it happened, what we did, and all of that. So, and then we'll start on the long-term plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. The incident we had was just over 2 weeks ago on the Friday. So it would have been Friday 10 days ago. We got a measurement of E. coli in our water supply. It was E. coli that was in a sampling point that we take in the Pinedale reservoirs, and I'll talk about a bit of the background in a few moments. But we got a measurement of E. coli in one of the reservoirs. Immediately that we got that result, we rushed out, isolated the reservoir so it was no longer providing water into the system, took a second sample, then emptied the reservoir and disinfected the reservoir. When we were cleaning the reservoir out, we found the cause of the E. coli transgression. It was 6 mice that had got into the top of the reservoir and fallen in. So it was one of those things where they had got in underneath the lip on the roof of the reservoir, and it was something that was not visible from the outside. We inspect our reservoirs every 6 months, and the last time we inspected it, we didn't see that, and it's probably something we wouldn't have seen anyway. So the issue is we've had some mice that fell into the lake, fell into the reservoir, they died, and that resulted in an E. coli being recognised in our sampling points. And as I say, the sample, we got the results within 24 hours of the incident occurring, and within 20 minutes we had staff on site. Within 30 minutes we had the reservoir isolated and shut down. And I guess, as the Worship mentioned, the one area that we did lose was we didn't communicate quick enough to the wider community. We communicated through Facebook, through antenna and the likes, so we used the electronic media, and we got mails, brochures printed, and those went out, and we had some of them distributed, but we didn't get to everybody, and that was really something which I was also part of. I wasn't aware that when the brochures came back, I should have asked the question, why are there so many brochures, and we should have then got people to come out on that Saturday. And I think if we'd done that, people would have felt far more informed. But having said that, we're going to do a bit of a debrief, and we'll talk to the community in about 2 weeks' time, and we really need to use every opportunity to improve our procedures, so all feedback will be welcomed and taken in a positive way. So if we just talk about our water supply, I guess in Putaruru we've got 2 really good water sources. One is the Te Waho Blue Springs, and for your information, there are just some smaller versions of this map at the back, so just help yourselves to that, to a copy. We'll take the rest of the copies, we'll go to the library, so they'll be available if anybody else would like a copy of the map, all these information sheets. So just going through again, we've got the Te Waikato stream flowing through there, we've got an intake, and so we take the water out of the Blue Springs. At the point, we filter it through some microfilters. 1 micron is the diameter that we take salt out of. We then UV disinfect it and pump it along this country water main through to the Pinedale reservoirs. Pine Street, what's it? Pine Road is out here, and so that's where the Pinedale reservoirs are. We've got 2 timber tanks there, and the water goes into those, and then from there it feeds back into Domain Road, which is out here. At that point, we have a small pipe that comes off the main water supply, and that pipe is shown in red. You'll see better on the maps that you got at the back. And that red pipeline is a pipeline that goes through to the 3 bottlers, goes out to Aquasplash, to New Zealand Quality Waters, and then runs along the railway track into the Amatil supply. So that's a small pipe that comes off the main council's main. As you can see, this reticulation goes along the state highway, feeds into the industrial area and the whole residential area of Putaruru. In addition to Te Waikato, we've got the Glenshee bore, and we've got the bore and the reservoir right adjacent to each other near the sports field there. So the water there, currently at Glenshee, we add chlorine. We're in the process of putting in UV and microfiltration. And so that was actually due to be commissioned this week. But we've actually put that on hold while we work our way through the current situation. We didn't want to be being in a position that when you're trying to commission a water supply, things can go slightly wrong, and then you might have to turn off the one supply and not the other. The reason we do it in winter is winter demands about half of what our summer demands are, and we're therefore virtually capable of providing water to the whole of Putaruru, either from Blue Springs, Te Waikato, or from the Glenshee. It's a bit difficult to achieve that over winter, but we can, by stretching ourselves, provide that. So we said, well, we're going to commission the Glenshee bores now, the upgrades, which really would be essentially state-of-the-art treatment. So there's, I think, a misconception, and I think part of it was our information we put out to the press when we said, well, out to the community, that we had a transgression in the Pinedale reservoirs. I think some people thought we were taking water from Pinedale, and that's not the case. The water actually comes from Te Waikato. There was some thought about sawdust and water contamination that might be out there. It's not dependent on that. The other misconception in town is who gets what supply. So, to make it quite simple, I would say that most of the people in this area would predominantly receive water from Glenshee. At times during the year, they may receive water from Te Waikato, but most of their water supply will be predominantly Glenshee water. People in this area, in the lower, the southern part of Putaruru, would predominantly get Blue Spring water, but they would, on occasions, like for the last week or so, be getting water from Glenshee. And people in the middle area will get a mixture of the 2 supplies. So the water, we feed it in from the 2 directions, and the equilibrium point varies depending on where the demand is on that day, whether we are working this source harder than the source or vice versa. So it changes on a day-to-day, so you can't stand up here and say, if you're on such and such a street, your water supply will be from here or there. It's a mixture of both. So our sampling there is some information on here. We talk about what the purpose of the microfiltration, and that is really to remove everything of 1 micron or greater, which is just so tiny you wouldn't be able to see it from the water supply. And in doing that, we remove most things like cysts and which are associated with Giardia and Cryptosporidium, but we don't stop E. coli and we don't stop viruses because they are much smaller, they'll go through that. We then add the UV disinfection, which is really like a huge electronic shock that breaks down the body of anything that comes in contact with, and that really means that they're no longer able to infect people. So that really deals with once again, the Cryptosporidium and Giardia, which are the real nasties. It doesn't deal with E. coli. The only way to deal with E. coli is chlorine, and that is why we're adding chlorine into the supply. And that is, in the LTP, we've actually added an item there to say, let's add in the chlorine at Blue Springs, at Te Waiho, Blue Springs. And the other item was we suggested that we should be putting in a dedicated water supply which could be used for the bottlers, but they would pay for that themselves. So it wouldn't be borne by the wider community. I think that's about most of what I wanted to say. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Next steps, Tim. What's happening now?
Okay, next steps. So the first step was to sample. So what we have, in terms of the drinking water standards, we are required to sample about every 4 days, and we've been sampling 4 days up until the event. Since that event, we've been sampling every day. So we've been collecting for samples and testing for E. coli, but we've also taken the additional precaution of testing for total coliforms. And total coliforms is the bigger subset that covers E. coli plus all other coliforms. And so we've been sampling that on a daily basis just to get a real decent understanding of what's happening in the water supply. So what we've done is we're going to leave the chlorination in place. We're looking at putting in a temporary chlorination unit at Te Waiho until we can get, if it goes through the budget, we can put in a permanent chlorination unit. So that would be the ideal. At this stage, we've been adding chlorine in at the reservoirs, but it is be more scientific to add it in there because you need that 30 minutes contact period. And also currently we've got a couple of rural people taking water off the supply that are receiving unchlorinated water. So from a health perspective, we'd rather chlorinate there. So that's the step, is that we're going to put in a temporary measure, some chlorine. We've stepped up our monitoring to be well beyond what we require, and we're also sampling for total coliforms at the moment. When we get to a stage where we feel there is nothing out there, that we feel as if we're on top of everything, we will slowly reduce our monitoring, mainly because of the cost associated with the additional monitoring. But we haven't yet had a chance to brief our elected members on this incident, and so depending on what comes back, and that's why, in terms of our feedback, I think we really need to take on board any feedback we get. And if there is a feeling that we need to continue with monitoring more frequently, that is something we can consider.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Craig, sorry, you're in here now. Do you want to, we actually, Tim had it on his laptop, so we started using it.
I'm just going to reiterate what T said. I think the first thing that's important to understand is that this was an operational issue. It had nothing to do with the governors and councils or anything. It was an operation within the water, an issue within the water source. We got the comms wrong, and I'll put my hand up, that's my responsibility, and we will learn from it. I mean, that's the key. And Tim's already apologised, I'll apologise again. We do want to hear from you as members of the public around what you want to hear from us, how we could have done things better. Certainly on the Friday, we dropped the ball, and I think from Monday on, hopefully the hindsight's 2020. It gives us an opportunity to actually understand those shortcomings and put plans in place so that, God forbid it ever happens again, we can respond appropriately. So, again, my apologies. Thanks, Chris.
When did you actually decide to do this test? Was this just a standard routine test? So it wasn't the people that were ending up in hospital with Campylobacter?
No.
I understand that a number of people were very ill and it had been going around town for days. A friend of mine ended up in hospital from the 13th through to the 17th. So you know, why was this not sort of picked up? Kindergarten children were getting sick.